Buenos dias. In this video, we're going to set up a free Amazon Web Services or AWS account where we can get 2 instances running on EC2 for free per month. So if you just go to Google, you can type in AWS free and hit enter. And you see the first thing that pops up here is an advertisement for Amazon Web Services. We can click on this. And what's cool about this, I think Amazon does it because it's a little bit confusing, AWS is you can get 12 months free, you see right here. You can always get always free. But realistically, what we want to look at is trying this out. And there's a lot of options here. I'm going to make the screen bigger. But we're really interested in the EC2 because our goal in this case is to run one instance of Linux and one instance of Windows server, a version of server, for 1 year for free. This way we can try out some exercises, we could do some testing, we can get familiar with the AWS and EC2. So EC2 is a portion of AWS. And this is where you can stand up instances. And an instance is basically an operating system that you stand up in the cloud, and then you can remotely access it and even configure a firewall to control what ports are accessible from the internet. So if you click on expand details here under Amazon EC2, and you see it says you get 750 hours per month, expand details. So 750 hours per month per instance. There's 30 days in a month roughly. So if you do 30 days times 24, you can see that's 720. Some months have 31 days, which would give you 744. So basically, you can run these instances all the time for 1 year for free. So you see it says try Amazon EC2 free. We'll click on this. And now it's going to ask you to create an AWS account. So you'll go ahead and put in your email address, password, and an account name. And this is the name for your account. You can see right there. So go ahead and pause the video. And once you put that in, we'll return to the video. For the account type here, you can select either professional or personal. Realistically, the only difference is if you select professional, you notice it pops up a company name there. So you can enter a company name. So it even gives you some information here. If you want to use it for your organization, you should select professional. But since we're just talking about using this to get familiar with AWS and EC2, we can select personal here. It is then going to ask you for a credit card number or a debit card. You can be rest assured that you won't be charged anything unless you exceed the free tier limits, which is the 750 hours per micro instance. And after you've gone through the verification process, so you would have had to put your credit card number in and put in a phone number. Amazon would have called you, and then you had to put in that 4-digit PIN. This is where you select the support plan. You don't really need a support plan because we're using the free service. Unless you want to pay for support, I suggest you just keep it free for now. So go ahead and click on the free plan here. And you can personalize your experience. This is not too important. There's a few tutorials down here you can do. I'm going to walk you through how to set up a Linux virtual machine, or you can watch this one. And then we'll also set up a Windows virtual machine, and we'll discuss how to connect to both of those. Once you've signed in, this is where it gets a little bit confusing. I think this is why Amazon gives you a year free, so you can get familiar with this interface. There's a lot of services available. There's a lot of options here. For now, we're just going to go up here to services and select EC2 EC2 is what allows you to run those two free tier virtual machines for 1 year. So if I go ahead and click on services, and you see there's a lot you can do with Amazon. And as I mentioned, this is probably why they give you a year free, so you can get familiar with this stuff. We're just going to look at EC2 for now, but as you see, we've got stuff called Lambda, Cloud9, X-Ray, Amazon Poly, Amazon Lex. So there's a lot of stuff you can learn, and you could spend, many hours trying to figure all these things out. So for now, let's just click on EC2. And our objective here is to stand up one instance of Linux and one instance of Windows for our free tier. So again, even this interface, which is just for EC2, is a little bit busy. It's not too bad though. I'll kind of walk through most of this. So let's just click on Launch Instance here. And they tell you which instances are free tier eligible over here. And basically, we will select one of these, and this is what we'll have access to. So these are the Linux free tier instances. We've got Ubuntu, which might be a good one to start with. We've also got SUSE. We've got Amazon's RDS, which is a database. We don't need that though, so go ahead and hide that. We've got Windows Server 2016. You see this is free as well. And you can even scroll down here. There's a lot of different things you can do. 2012, if you want to run in 2012. Just remember, you can run one Linux instance and one Windows instance concurrently for 1 year for free. So to keep this simple, I'm going to select scroll up here, a Ubuntu instance, this one right here. So Ubuntu Server 16.04. I'm going to go ahead and select that. We'll start off with this one. This will be our Linux instance. And when you select that operating system, it gives you a bunch of options here. These options are how many processors you want, how much RAM you want, what kind of performance you want, etc. In our case, since this one is already selected, the free tier eligible, we'll go ahead and just go with that one, because our purpose is not really to stand up a production environment, but to stand up an environment we can use to get familiar with EC2 and AWS, and also the Linux and Windows instances. So you see it says right there it's eligible for the free tier up to 750 hours of micro instances per month. So the micro instance is right here, the T2 micro. Again, this is just the size of the instance, which is a correlation to the number of virtual CPUs and RAM. So I'll go ahead, and that's already selected. So go ahead and click on Review and Launch. And it just does review here. We don't have to change anything. We're just confirming it looks the way we want it. So if we selected the wrong instance, you can edit it right here. So the security group used by default here is this one called Launch Wizard 1. And that's fine. We could modify that if we want to though. But Launch Wizard 1, as you see here, allows us to secure shell from anywhere to our instance. This is the way we will administer the Linux instances via secure shell. And we will use a tool like PuTTY to secure shell into the instance and administer it that way. And then if you want to tunnel different protocols, you can do that over secure shell. So again, we'll just go ahead and click on Review Launch here. Go ahead and launch. So with this, you have to create a key pair. So the way EC2 authenticates you is with a private and public key, as it discusses right here. This is much more secure than a username and password. So if you already have a key pair, you can use that one. If not, you can create one. We're going to go here, create a new key pair, and we'll call this the name of the key pair. So we'll just call this one, we'll call it EC2 test, EC2 test, and it gives you the instructions here. You'll download a PIM file before you can continue. So go ahead and download key pair, and it's going to ask us where we want to save it. We don't want to open it, we're going to save it. So I'm going to save it to a directory, and it went to the download directory here on this system. Now I'm going to go ahead and click on Launch Instances. And what this is doing is starting the instance. And once the instance is started, we will be able to use that key to secure shell into it. And you can look at the status of the instance here. So this is the one we just started. This is the Linux Ubuntu instance. You click on that, it'll give you the status. It says it's already running, which is pretty fast. If we scroll over, or we can look at the bottom here, you can see the state is running. This is our public DNS name. So this is the public IP address assigned to that virtual machine. So this is the IP address we will be secure shelling into, and that is actually natted to this private IP address right here. So 172.31 is the actual IP address of this instance, and this again is the public IP address we will be secure shelling into. To keep this easy to understand and a little straightforward, I'm going to name the instance. I'll just call this Ubuntu Free, and then when we stand up a Windows instance, we'll name it as well. So you can also click on Connect right here. This will bring up a Java SSH client, which I don't recommend. I think PuTTY is a little bit better than the Java SSH client, but if you don't want to install PuTTY, which is a SSH client, you could try the Java SSH client from the browser. As I mentioned, we're going to use PuTTY. It even gives you instructions here on how to connect using PuTTY. So if I click on that, it takes you to the instructions, which is a useful guide here. So we're going to go ahead and install PuTTY from the download page. And the latest version you see is 0.70. It is a free SSH client. It's pretty awesome. So click on download here. We can use the 64-bit. The computer I'm on is a 64-bit Windows computer. Click on this. We'll save that. And when that's done downloading, we'll launch it. We'll give that a second to install. We can just select the defaults here for PuTTY. Alright, looks like it's done. So one of the problems with PuTTY is it does not support the PEM format, the format of the key that Amazon gives you. So we have to run this tool called PuTTYGen, which when you downloaded and installed PuTTY, it came with PuTTY. This tool, we can convert the key to a format PuTTY understands, essentially. Alright, now that we have PuTTYGen started, which we need to start in order to convert the key to the right format for AWS. So just go to the start button here, select PuTTYGen. That's what I brought up. We're going to select RSA, which is just like this screen here shows, for the type of key to generate. And we're going to load the key we saved from AWS. So click on load, and we're going to change the format here to all. We will load that right there. See, it says it successfully imported it, which is what you want to see. Now you can type in a key phrase, which is a password to access the key, or you can leave it blank if you want to. In this case, we'll type in a key phrase. So just type in a password. So anytime you access this key, you need that passphrase. If I can type. Okay, I typed in a passphrase, not an extremely secure one, it's not very long, but it'll suffice for this. Then we're going to save the private key. So click on Save Private Key. This is the right format, the PPK format, so we'll call this EC2 Key. You can call it whatever you want to, that's what I'm going to call mine. Click on Save, and everything should be good to go. So now let's verify we can use PuTTY to connect to our Linux instance running on AWS. So we've generated the key in the right format. Now let's run PuTTY. So go to the Start menu and type in PuTTY. Should pop up. And now this is where we're going to connect to our instance. If we go back to the instance, which you may have left open, you see there's the host name as well as the IP address. So this is basically how we're going to connect. I'm going to go ahead and close this, and if I move this over, you can see here's the public IP address. That's what we're going to connect to. You can also use the host name, which has the IP address in the host name. So I'm going to connect to 18.217.134.24. Right there is the IPv4 public IP address. 22 is what we're going to connect to. But now we have to configure the key. We're not connecting using a username and password. We're connecting using a key. I'm also going to save this here. So I'm just going to call this Ubuntu EC2 free. And I'll save this. So now anytime we connect, we have these parameters saved using PuTTY. Over here under connection, I'm going to expand SSH. And here's where we're going to specify our keys. So I'm going to expand authentication. Click on authentication. The private key file used for authentication right here is where we're going to browse and select the file we created with PuTTYGen. There it is. It's the only one that shows up because it's in the right format, PPK. Open that. And I'm going to go ahead and scroll back up here to the session and click on Save. So now I've got the IP address and the key saved. I'll click on Open. You should get a warning here about the fingerprint. Click on Yes. And login is Ubuntu. And the passphrase for the key is the passphrase we created earlier using PuTTYGen. And now I am secure shelled into that system. So this is the system we just set up on EC2. So for the colors with PuTTY, this is just personal preference. I changed the default foreground to green. The default background is the same, black, and then I changed the cursor text and color to the green as well, which should give us that matrix look. And again, you want to save these settings each time so you don't have to redo them once you get them right. If I click on Open, you see we've got the green text here. Again, it's Ubuntu, and then the passphrase if you used one for your private key. And now we're on the Ubuntu system. You can do an ls. It shows you the IP address you logged on from as well, which right here is mine. You can do ls. You can do all your normal Linux commands. So if we cd to root, we do an ls, and we're on a Linux system. You can also ping 8.8.8.8. So this, not pint, sorry, ping 8.8.8.8 just to verify you have connectivity, but obviously we do because we just secure shelled into it. So this system is live on the internet. It's only accessible right now via port 22. If you do want to add additional ports like stand up Apache or something on here, you have to go to the Amazon instance over here. I'll show you real quick and modify the security settings. So the security group right now is the Launch Wizard 1. So we need to modify this if we want to allow another port to connect. I can click on Launch Wizard 1, and it shows me right here at the bottom. Let me scroll up a little bit. The inbound only port that's open, everything else is blocked by default. The only one that's open is port 22. You can also further restrict this, so only your IP address or only a subnet you want can connect on port 22. You can always change that later because this is an out-of-band firewall. But if I want to add Apache, for instance, on port 80 or 443, you could click on Edit here, specify HTTP, which is port 80, and then from what specific IP addresses, and you can give it a description. And this works with all the rules. It's pretty straightforward. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them beneath this video. Hopefully you found this video useful. We'll do another video later on how to do the same thing with our free tier, but with a Windows instance. So the whole point of this video is just to show you how to set up Amazon AWS EC2, how to set the free tier, and then how to stand up an instance and how to connect to that instance using PuTTY. So that instance we stood up so far is a Linux instance. Windows instance is a little bit easier because you simply use remote desktop to connect to it. We'll do that in the next video. Thanks. Have a great day.